Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready to really get into reflective practice and critical thinking.
Absolutely. Always up for a good deep dive.
We got some really fascinating excerpts from like a university course plan on those very topics.
Sounds right up our alley.
And you know what's really cool? It's not just theory.
Yeah.
It's got all these like practical tools you can actually use, especially if you're in education.
Oh, interesting. So like taking it out of the textbook and into the classroom.
Exactly. So the course kicks off with this quote from John Dewey back in 1910. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it defines reflective practice as the active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it.
Wow. Dewey always gets to the heart of things, doesn't he? And I love that emphasis on active. It's not just, sitting back and pondering. It's about really challenging our own thinking.
Right, like, hold on, why do I believe this? What evidence do I have?
Exactly. And that's what makes it so powerful. It's about becoming more aware of our own thought processes.
The course even uses this term reflective practitioner. It's someone who's constantly analyzing their experiences to improve their practice.
I love that idea. And it applies to so many fields, not just education. Think about doctors, lawyers, even artists.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyone is always striving to get better at what they do.
Absolutely. And you know what? This course actually lays out some frameworks to help with that whole reflective process, like Gibbs's model, Kolb's learning cycle, and Goodman's levels of reflection.
Okay, so like different ways to approach reflection.
Exactly. Each offers a slightly different lens.
I'm kind of drawn to Goodman's model. It seems really accessible.
Yeah, it's a good one. It breaks reflection down into 3 levels.
Okay, so what's that look like?
Well, the first level is all about reaching objectives. Basically, it's just like learning from experience at a basic level.
Right, like the aha moment after you try something new.
Exactly. Then you got level 2, connecting principles and practice. That's where you start digging deeper into the why behind your actions.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just what happened, but the underlying reasons?
Exactly. You start connecting what you did to bigger ideas and theories.
I see. And that leads to...
Level 3, ethical and social concerns. This is where you start thinking about the bigger picture, how your actions affect others, how they align with your values.
It's like zooming out to see the impact beyond yourself.
Yes. And it's fascinating how these levels build on each other. You start with that basic understanding and then gradually move towards a more critical, nuanced perspective.
It's like climbing a ladder of reflection.
I like that. A ladder of reflection.
Have you ever found yourself like stuck on a particular level?
Oh, totally. Especially when I was starting out as a teacher. It was easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day and just focus on whether things went well or not.
So you were mostly at that level 1.
Yeah, pretty much. But then, I started realizing that I wasn't really growing unless I pushed myself to connect those experiences to bigger ideas, to think about the why.
So you had to like consciously climb that ladder.
Exactly. And it wasn't always easy, but the more I did it, the more natural it became, and the more valuable those reflections became too.
I can imagine. So thinking about Goodman's levels now, where do you find yourself on that ladder these days?
It's a good question. I think I'm always kind of bouncing between them, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not like you reach a certain level and then you're done.
Exactly. It's more like a dance, I guess. You move back and forth depending on the situation.
I like that analogy. So speaking of tools for reflection, the course plan also talks about reflective journaling.
Oh yeah, journaling. It can be so powerful. Though I'll admit I was kind of resistant to it at first.
Really? Why is that?
I don't know. I guess I thought it was a bit too touchy-feely.
Yeah, I get that. Like just writing down your feelings.
Yeah, something like that. But then I realized that it's not about that at all. It's more about capturing your thoughts and experiences in a way that helps you make sense of them.
Oh, that makes more sense. So how'd you get started with it?
Well, I had a mentor who was really big on journaling. She encouraged me to just try it for a week, no pressure, just see what happens.
What happened?
It was amazing. I started noticing patterns in my teaching, things that I wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so I used to get really frustrated when students wouldn't participate in class discussions.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. It's the worst.
Right. But when I started journaling about it, I noticed that it always seemed to happen on Mondays.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then I realized that maybe it wasn't about the students at all. Maybe it was about me. Maybe I wasn't bringing enough energy to those Monday classes.
Wow, that's a great insight. And you wouldn't have gotten there without the journaling.
Probably not. It helped me to step back and see things from a different perspective.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
The course plan actually lists a bunch of benefits of reflective journaling, specifically for educators.
No, yeah. Like what?
Well, it mentions storing ideas, which, can be super helpful for lesson planning.
No, yeah, totally. Like
Yeah.
a little treasure chest of inspiration.
Exactly. And it also talks about building confidence.
Right, because when you take the time to reflect on your successes, it can be really affirming.
Especially when you're feeling down or, doubting yourself.
Exactly. It's like, oh, yeah, I did do a good job with that lesson. I am a good teacher.
And it can also help you to clarify your perspectives, see things more clearly.
Absolutely. And you know what else? It can even foster creative expression.
Oh, interesting. Like how so?
Well, when you're journaling, you're not just thinking about what happened, you're also thinking about how you feel about it. And that can lead to some really powerful insights and connections.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. So, do you have any tips for people who are new to reflective journaling? Like, where do they even begin?
Yeah, well, the course plan actually recommends a pretty simple structure, borrowing from Machen and Webb. It's called description, interpretation, outcome.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. So first you describe what happened, just the facts,
Okay, like a little summary.
Exactly. Then you move on to interpretation. What does it mean? Why did it happen this way?
So that's where you start digging deeper.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, you focus on the outcome. What did you learn? How can you apply it moving forward?
Oh, I see. So it's like taking that reflection and turning it into action.
Exactly. But honestly, the most important thing is to just find what works for you.
Yeah, you don't want it to feel like a chore, right?
Exactly. It should be something that you enjoy, something that helps you to grow and reflect.
So we've talked about reflective practice, we've talked about journaling, but this deep dive wouldn't be complete without talking about critical thinking.
Oh, for sure. Those two concepts go hand in hand, don't they?
Absolutely. So how does this course plan define critical thinking?
Well, it describes it as intellectually disciplined thinking, and it emphasizes things like actively understanding, analyzing, questioning, and evaluating information.
So it's not just about absorbing information passively, it's about really engaging with
Oh,
it.
exactly. It's about asking tough questions, challenging assumptions, and looking at things from different perspectives.
Kind of like what we were talking about with journaling.
Yeah, totally. It's all connected.
And when you combine that critical thinking lens with reflective practice, you get
Critical reflection.
bingo.
And that's where things get really interesting, because now you're not just understanding what happened, you're also questioning why it matters, what the implications are, and how it connects to bigger ideas and theories.
It's like taking that reflective journey to a whole new level.
Exactly. And the course emphasizes how important this type of reflection is for educators. It can help them to analyze their teaching practices, identify areas for improvement, and ultimately become more effective in their roles.
That makes a lot of sense. Because if you're not constantly reflecting and questioning, how can you ever really grow?
Right. It's all about continuous improvement. And you know what? The course even provides some specific vocabulary to help educators make their reflections more powerful.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, for example, during the interpretation stage of journaling, they recommend using words like analyze, compare, contrast, or connect.
Okay, so those words can help you to dig deeper into the meaning of an event.
Exactly. And then when you're reflecting on the outcome, they suggest using words like apply, change, develop, or improve.
So those words are more action-oriented.
Yes. They help you to focus on what you can do differently next time.
I love that. It's like giving yourself a little nudge in the right direction.
Exactly. But even with all these tools and frameworks, I think it's important to remember that reflection is a very personal process.
Right, there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. Some people might love journaling, while others might find it really intimidating. And that's okay. The key is to find what works for you and what helps you to engage in that critical analytical thinking process.
So it could be journaling, it could be talking to a mentor, it could be just taking some quiet time to think.
Exactly. Whatever helps you to reflect and grow.
So we've talked a lot about the individual benefits of reflective practice and critical thinking, but the course material also mentions this really cool real-world application.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, apparently the students in this course actually use an online blog to share their reflections and engage in discussions.
Wow, that's awesome. So they're putting these concepts into practice in a real-world setting.
Exactly. And it's not just about sharing their own experiences. They're also reading and responding to each other's posts, which can lead to some really interesting dialogue and debate.
Oh, I bet. It's like a virtual community of practice.
Yeah, exactly. And the course material emphasizes how valuable this kind of peer-to-peer learning can be. Because you're not just getting one perspective, you're getting multiple perspectives.
That's so cool. I wish we had access to that blog. I love to see what those students are saying.
Me too. But even without seeing the actual posts, I think we can still imagine what those discussions might look like.
Yeah, for sure. Like imagine a student teacher posting about a lesson that went totally wrong.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that.
Right.
It happens to the best of us.
Right. And then other students could chime in with their own experiences and offer advice or support.
It's like crowdsourcing professional development.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this whole idea of reflective practice and critical thinking so powerful. It's not just about individual growth, it's about collective growth.
Yeah, it's about learning from each other and supporting each other along the way.
Exactly. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
So before we got sidetracked by that amazing blog idea, we were talking about student teachers and those oh-so-relatable lessons that totally bomb.
Oh, yeah. Like, imagine someone, maybe Sarah, posting about a fractions lesson that just went sideways.
Ooh, fractions. Always a tricky one.
Right. And, like, she could start by just describing what happened, you know, how the lesson was structured, what the students were doing, how she was feeling.
Okay, so just setting the scene.
Exactly. And if she's coming at it from Goodman's level 1, she might stop there, you know? Just acknowledge that it didn't work and move on.
But to really get something out of it, she'd need to go deeper.
Right. She'd have to start asking why. Like, why did the students get lost? Was it her explanations? Did she not connect it to their prior knowledge?
So that's moving into level 2, connecting those principles in practice.
Exactly. And then to take it even further to level 3, she could think about the ethical implications. Like, did she create a safe space for students to ask questions? Did she accidentally reinforce any stereotypes with her examples?
Oh, wow. I never thought about it that way. That's really insightful.
Right. And imagine the conversation that could happen in the comments.
Oh, yeah. Other students could chime in with their own experiences, maybe offer some suggestions.
Exactly. And someone might even challenge her, you know, like,
Yeah.
hey, you're focusing a lot on yourself, but what about the students? What were they thinking and feeling?
Oh, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in our own perspective.
Totally. And that's where the critical thinking comes in. The blog becomes this space for them to not only reflect on their own practice, but also to give and receive constructive feedback.
It's like peer-to-peer professional development. Way cooler than any workshop I've ever been to.
Right. And think about the long-term impact. These future teachers are learning how to constantly analyze their teaching, adapt to different needs, create a more inclusive classroom.
That's setting them up for success way beyond just like knowing how to teach fractions.
Exactly. It's about developing those critical thinking skills that will serve them throughout their entire careers.
And it all comes back to those seemingly simple concepts: reflective practice and critical thinking.
So powerful, right? And they're not just for teachers either. Anyone can benefit from them.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, no matter what you do, take some time to reflect on your experiences, ask those tough questions, and keep learning and growing.
I couldn't said it better myself.
Thanks for diving deep with us today, everyone. Until next time, keep those reflective juices flowing.